Hello everyone, I am back for another poker vlog, more 2-5, no limit at the Bellagio. I have my new buddy with me here. He does not yet have a name. We are thinking of a few possible ones. We're thinking Thor, Feng, or maybe Finn for this guy. If you have any preferences among those three, let me know in the comments. If you like a different name completely for him, let me know in the comments. We're going to choose pretty quick. Obviously, he's going to need a name, but we're open to suggestions at this time. The hands we're here to talk about today happened during the World Series. It was a Friday, June 24th at the Bellagio. Games obviously pretty good during the World Series. They haven't really been as great since, but that's how it goes. Sometimes it's pretty slow after the World Series. Hopefully it'll start picking up again here pretty soon. Other than that, I actually did play a couple World Series events for the first time this year. I played the tag team with my wife. That structure, you don't start with a bunch of chips. Unfortunately, we just couldn't really get anything going in that one, so we were out pretty quick. I did play the Colossus, which is only a $400 buy-in, and there's, I think, two day ones. And I bagged day one. That's if you bag day one, you cash. And I made day two, and I ended up busting in the low 700s, which is not a lot of money, but there were almost 16,000 people that bought into that tournament, so I felt pretty happy with that considering I don't play a ton of tournaments. And then I played the 777 tournament, and I think they started paying out a level or two after dinner, and I busted out a level before dinner. So I didn't make the money, but I kind of deep in there. So maybe next year we'll play some tournaments. Obviously, this is a cash vlog for the most part. If you want to watch tournaments at all, let me know. I didn't really vlog any of the World Series, but I've been pretty roller coastery in my cash games lately. I start out good, and then I've been getting coolered a lot. And so there's some options when that's happening. You can drop down in stakes. I could play some 1-3. You could just keep playing how you've been playing and try to ride it out, or you could tighten up and try to just play tighter, more premium hands. The other option is you can maybe go up in stakes and take a shot, and I think that I'm probably going to play either some more 2-5 at Win, which is obviously the same stakes but a bigger game, or maybe even 5-10 at Bellagio. So I might be vlogging one of those for you pretty soon, but without taking too much time in an intro here, let's get to the hands. I buy in for the max 500 as usual, and here's some quick fire hands to start out the vlog. So my very second hand of the night, I have King Jack in the hijack. I raise to 20, the button, and the big blind call. The flop is 9 high with 3 spades. I have the king of spades. I bet 25, and the button calls, the big blind folds. The turn is the 7 of hearts. I bet 60, and he folds, so I win. Obviously, it's a pretty good flop. I have the king high flush draw and 2 overs and backdoor straights, and I end up winning the first hand. The very next hand, I'm in the low jack with queen 10 of diamonds. I raise to 20, only the button calls. The flop is 9-6 king with 2 diamonds. I have a gut shot and a flush draw. I bet 25, and he folds. The very next hand, so the third hand in a row and the fourth hand of the night that I've been dealt, I have queen jack offsuit. I'm in the +1 position. I raise to 20. The low jack raises to 40, and only I call. The flop is 8-9 jack rainbow. That seems pretty good. Top pair gut shot draw. I check. He bets 25, and I call. The turn is the 8 of hearts. That seems okay also. I check. He bets 60, and I call. The river is the 9 of hearts, double pairing the board. That's not the greatest, but top pair jack still seems okay. I check, planning to call a bet if he makes it, but he checks behind, saying that I'm good, and I win. So smooth sailing so far. About 13 hands later, I have ace-9 of diamonds in the low jack. The under the gun player raises to 20. I call. The button calls, and the big blind calls. The flop is king of diamonds, 3 of hearts, jack of diamonds. So I have some backdoor straight draws, but of course I have the nut flush draw and an over. It gets checked around. The turn is the 8 of diamonds, bringing me in the nut flush. Feel pretty good about that. It gets checked to me again. I bet 30, and only the under the gun player, who was the original raiser, calls. The river is the Jack of Hearts. That seems like it's probably a fairly safe card, but obviously you're not the nuts anymore, hoping that the guy raised under the gun was some sort of jack, but obviously prefer to keep the nuts. He checks to me again. There's about 140 in the pot, and I bet $75. So now there's about 215 in the pot, and he check raise shoves on me for an additional 249 more, making it a $539 pot. So it's 249 to call into 539. Let me break down my thought process on this one here, and the competing or conflicting reads that I have at this time. So this guy was talking to the player to my left about playing in the WSOP seniors event the day before this session. So your initial impression maybe would be old man coffee kind of poker. He's playing a seniors event. He's probably just some tight player. This has to be a full house of some sort. Flush can't be good. But, hold on. He also told the guy that he bought into that event 5 times. Fired 5 bullets into the senior event. So maybe not as old man coffee as you might think. I've only been at the table about 13 hands. He's been involved a little bit. Hasn't seemed super crazy, but not really a big enough sample size, I would say, to get a really great read on it. It feels like he can only be check raising here for value. It's 249 more to call. It'd be a pretty sketchy bluff, but would he do this with 3 jacks? Maybe not. Would he do this with a worse flush? Like, queen high flush or something? Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. My thought process during the hand was, for me to really be beat here, he has to have raised pre-flop with pocket kings or pocket jacks and slow played a set on the flop, the turn, and the river, or exactly king jack and flop top 2 and then slow played the flop, the turn, and the river. And those seem possible, but would you really check the flop and the turn with one of those hands? I'm not entirely sure. I do talk myself into making the call, and he shows king jack, flop top 2, river, a full house, and I find a way to lose the maximum with the nut flush here. Let me know what you think about this one. I think I'm probably supposed to fold this one, but it's pretty hard to fold 249 into a pot of 540 with the nut flush. I'm literally losing to kings, jacks, king jack. I guess I'm losing to jack 8 or jack 3, but this guy's never raising pre-flop with one of those hands. I guess I'm losing to pocket 8s or pocket 3s, but I also don't think he's raising under the gun with one of those hands. So let me know what you think about this one. This one's bothered me for a little while. Everyone told me, oh, he's never doing that without a full house. It's like, yeah, that's probably true. But in the moment, it's hard to lay down a nut flush for 249 into a pot that's laying you better than 2-1. So anyway, let me know what you think. Moving on. A bit later, I am in the cutoff with 10 jack offsuit. The hijack limps. I raise to 20. The big blind 3 bets to 50. The hijack calls. And I think you could fold here because 10 jack's not that strong. I'm not even suited. But in this situation, I've got the best position, and I'm happy to call and see a flop for only 30 more. The flop is 10-9-6 with the 9-6 being clubs. I have the 10 of clubs, but I have top pair, a decent kicker, and a backdoor straight draw. He gets checked to me. I bet 60. I don't want to see free cards, that's for sure. Too many overs that are bad for me. And the big blind check raise shoves all in for 312. Now, obviously my hand is not very strong here, but this player has been pretty actiony, been pretty bluffy, and this just feels like a pretty weak bet to me. Any very strong hand, I don't think check raise shoves on a flop like this. If he's got an overpair, maybe, but he wouldn't do that with any sets. He wouldn't do that if he randomly hit a straight, although he's the one who 3-bet pre-flop, so the odds of him having something like 7-8 aren't great. It seems like maybe someone would do this with aces or kings on this flop, is check raise shove it. I don't know. It feels weak to me, and it feels bluffy from this player. My biggest concern is an overpair, obviously, but it feels like a draw to me. This is the reason I like playing live poker better than online poker. Well, our online poker is not very great in Nevada, but also I like to get live reads on people. I've talked about this a lot in my vlog. I feel like your gut instinct is usually right. So my initial impression is he's bluffing or on some sort of, combo draw that has outs, but I'm ahead. I also study him a bit as well, and just my feeling on his body posture and his body language is that he does not want me to call. He really is hoping that I just fold. So I think about it for a long time, and I end up calling and hoping it's a bluff. I feel like that's what it's most likely is, and I guess if I'm behind, I still have some outs probably with the backdoor straight draw and also maybe two pair, I'm not sure. The turn is the 8 of clubs, which is a terrible card because if he was on a draw, he probably had a club draw and probably got there, or he could have Jack Queen and got there. Don't know. The river is the king of diamonds. That also seems like a pretty terrible card for me, but he says he has nothing, and I show my hand and I win. So I'm not really sure what he could be check raise shoving with here that ends up having nothing on this board. Ace X, I guess. Ace something. I don't know. But I end up winning this one. I feel like my read was good. The run out was bad, but obviously you can't control that. And I end up winning. I probably should have made him show for the vlog, but this is one thing I'm not great at for vlogging, but I try to be not a dick when playing poker. So if he tells me my hand's good, generally I'll show it and win the pot, especially if he's all in and I'm about to win a huge pot with not a great hand. I don't like to rub it in people's faces. So sorry, I can't tell you what he had here, but the read was good and end up winning a pretty nice one here with not a very strong hand. Here I'm under the gun with King Queen of Diamonds. It's a pretty hand. I raise to 20 the cutoff calls, the small blind calls, and the big blind calls. The flop is 5 of clubs, 9 of clubs, 10 of spades, so I have 2 overs, diamond draw, dreams are dead. I do have a gut shot, straight draw as well. I lead for 40, the cutoff and the small blind both call. The big blind folds. The turn is the 10 of hearts. That's a pretty bad card. I have nothing. It gets checked around though. The river is a pretty good card. It's the king of clubs. It does put a flush on the board. It also puts a lot of straights on the board, but it gives me top 2 pair with a good kicker. So it could be good, but hard to know. I'm not going to bet at it and get raised. It's just not that strong. I'd be happy to win the pot that's there. And it gets checked around. So I'm thinking my hand's probably pretty good here. The small blind is the first to show. That's the rule in Las Vegas, is if it gets checked through on the river, then the first player is supposed to show first. If there's a bet, then the person who bet and got called is supposed to show first. But no action, the first player is supposed to show first. So he doesn't show. I'm waiting for him to show. And then the guy in the cutoff shows King Jack. So obviously I'm better than King Jack. And with the first guy not showing, I figure he probably doesn't have much. So again, I could be a jerk and make him show, but I figure he's not showing because he doesn't have anything. So I don't want to slow roll the guy with King Jack with my King Queen. So I show out of turn, hey, I've got you beat, I got King Queen, and I'm expecting to win the hand. Then the guy in the small blind rolls over Jack Queen for a rivered straight. Here's some audio from the hand. I was not very happy with the guy slow rolling a straight here.
Straight.
Why? You're supposed to show first. Why you make everybody show?
I was watching his card that you showed. I was checking if he had another flush.
So his explanation is he's waiting to see if the guy in the cutoff has another flush. And first of all, that's not a good excuse. You're first to act. You should just show your hand, especially if you have one as strong as a straight. Now, if you have nothing and you don't want to show your hand, I mean, I guess. But even then, just show you have nothing so we can get the hand moving forward. But if you have a straight and you get 2 checks behind you. Clearly, neither one of us has a full house or even probably a flush. I think most flushes are probably going to make a value bet there. So his explanation's clearly BS, and I'm not too happy about it, and I keep it in the back of my mind in case we get a chance to get a little bit of revenge against this guy. Hands.
Later.
We are playing 5-handed. I am in the cutoff with pocket kings. The hijack limps. I raise to 20. Our buddy from the last hand, who's the big blind, he calls. And the hijack also calls. The flop is 2 of spades, 5 of hearts, 8 of clubs. That looks like a pretty great flop for kings. It gets checked to me. I bet 40. And our buddy from last hand in the big blind raises to 100. It's our new friend. I feel like folding would be antisocial at this point. But in all seriousness, this is just a great flop for kings. If he flopped a set, he probably doesn't check raise here because the board's not really that scary. There's some straight draws, but the odds of me raising pre-flop with... I mean, I guess I would raise pre-flop with 6-7 suited or something like that, but he probably doesn't put me on that, so I don't read a check raise as very strong here. I think it's probably a 1-pair hand. He probably has top pair or something like that, and I'm just not folding kings to a check raise from 40 to 100 on this board. If so, you're going to always be folding kings and aces to check raises. That's not a scary board, really. So I think about what to do here, but... I just call, everybody else folds. The turn is the jack of clubs. That also seems like a pretty good card. Now, there's more straight draws and a club flush draw, but no draws came in. None of the possible streets came in. So if I was ahead on the flop, I'm probably ahead on the turn, barring him having pocket jacks or some random jack 8, jack 5, jack deuce kind of hand. And he open shoves all in for 370. It's a kind of tough spot here, I think, because even though he did do the slow roll the last hand, he hasn't been playing crazy, so it's not the guy who shoved on me earlier with nothing. This guy's been playing pretty solid, although aggressive, and the board just still pretty dry. So it's probably a set or nothing unless it's just a random Jack X 2-pair hand, or he flopped a random 5-8 2-pair hand and called a raise, which obviously can happen. But I'm not really in a mood to fold here, and I mean, I don't think I'm tilting from the prior hand or anything. Kings just seem like they should be probably the best hand most of the time, I think. But it feels like it could be some sort of combo draw at this point. I don't know what open shoves for 370 here into a pot that's much less than that. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I think about it a little bit, and I end up making the call here. And the river is the 5 of spades. That seems like probably a pretty good card. If he randomly had 2-pair on the flop with the 5, obviously I'm crushed, but I was already crushed. But if he had Jack 8 or Jack 2 or something like that, some other 2-pair that doesn't involve a 5, now I'm ahead. And let's go to the audio.
You have aces?
So I'm still not that big of a jerk, but after he asked me if I have aces, typically I would know kings have to be good there, and I would say, no, I have kings, but since he slow rolled the prior hand, I just shake my head no, and wait for him to show. So I tell him, no, I don't have aces, but I don't tell him I do have kings until he shows me what he has. Which I normally wouldn't do, and it's not the biggest revenge move. It's just kind of like, normally I would give the courtesy of saying, no, but I have kings, so if aces are good, kings are good, obviously. But here I do not do that, mostly because the guy was a dick last hand.
I have Jack 8. 6.
So he did have Jack 8. He raised the flop with 1-pair, as I thought, and he randomly backed into top 2 on the turn and jammed. So I was behind when I called on the turn, and I get lucky on a river. But I still think you're supposed to probably call that turn on this board. I I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to fold. It seems like putting someone on exactly Jack 8 seems pretty unlikely to me. I think it's just one where you put your money in, and if they have you, they have you. If you don't catch up. But I do catch up here, and I guess the ultimate revenge is I stack the guy and he goes home complaining about how bad his luck is. So anyways, good game, sir, and we'll catch you next time. In this one, I'm in the small blind with ace 2 of spades. The hijack raises to 15. I call from the small blind. Then the big blind bumps it to 50 and the hijack calls. I guess sometimes you should probably consider 4-betting here and trying to squeeze them out, but for 35 more, I figure I'll just call here, and it's a pretty decent price, and see if I can hit something. The flop is 10 of hearts, 6 of spades, 4 of spades, so I pick up some backdoor straight draws, but essentially, obviously, I have my ace over, and I have the nut spade draw. I check, so does the big blind. The hijack bets 100. I think I have way too many outs, so I call. The big blind folds. The turn is the king of clubs, and I'm thinking about possibly check raising this one, but it goes check, check. The river is the 8 of clubs, and obviously that's not a great run out for me. I didn't hit any pairs, and I did not hit the nut flush, so ace high doesn't seem like it's probably going to be good here, although I'm not really sure what he has. Hands like nines, maybe jacks make sense, although I don't know if he just smooth calls the 50 with jacks. Maybe. Hands like those maybe make sense. Maybe something like ace 10 or queen 10. If he had a king, I think he probably bets the turn behind me. I don't think he loves the king, so I could check and give up here, or I could take a stab at it. Obviously, I don't think ace high is going to be good here, so I decided to take a stab at it. I bet 210, which is something like 2/3 pot, and he calls pretty quickly. I'll be honest with you, I didn't catch what he had. I was pretty frustrated with myself at the time. I know it was a 1-pair hand. I think it was nines or jacks, but I don't really remember, and I don't want to lie to you guys and tell you that I know what he had when I don't, but I do remember it was a 1-pair hand that kind of made sense with the board, but seemed like he also could have found a fold with his hand, but he smartly didn't, and he wins this one, and I punt away a few hundred that I didn't really have to. Here I have 6-3 of hearts in the low jack. I raise to 15 and only the small blind calls. The flop is a pretty good one. It's ace of hearts, jack of hearts, king of hearts. So that's about as good of a flop as you could hope for with 6-3 of hearts, I think. He checks to me, I bet 15, and he calls. The turn is the 4 of diamonds. He checks to me again. I think these spots are always interesting. Obviously, I don't want to let someone hit a heart because they're going to have a better heart than my 6. If the 4 flush comes in, but you also want people to call you to get value. So here I bet 40, and he calls again. The river is also good. It's the 7 of spades, so, you know, unless he's sandbagging a better heart flush than me, which I probably can't get away from too easily, I'm probably going to win this one. I bet 90, and I'm not really sure if... I'm trying to think of the most I can bet to get a call, and it's kind of hard to know exactly what he's got. He's probably got some sort of 2-pair hand, I'm guessing. He ends up calling the 90, and I show, and I win. I didn't see his hand. I assume it was either 2-pair or one of those pairs with a big heart, and he just wanted to make sure I wasn't bluffing, but probably one of those two things. All right, everyone. This next hand is a bit of a doozy. I am in the cutoff with 7-10 of spades. It folds to me. I raise to 15, and the big blind raises to 40. That's not a real raise. I'm not folding till pretty much anybody for that raise, but this particular guy hasn't been at the table super long, but very early on, he greatly overplayed pocket kings and called an all-in bet when there was a 4 straight on the board and a flush and a bunch of Broadway cards, and he just had 1 pair. So these are the kinds of players I'm especially trying to get tangled with hands like 10-7, because I just know that he's incapable of getting away from an overpair regardless of the action. So I call. We're heads up to a flop of 10 of hearts, 4 of hearts, 2 of spades. I flop top pair with a very middling kicker and a backdoor flush draw. That seems pretty good, but I'm going to be careful. He's first to act. He checks to me. I bet 50, and he calls. The turn is about the best card I could ask for. It's the 7 of diamonds, giving me top 2 pair. He checks to me again. I bet 105, and now he check raises me to 240. And in my head, I'm thinking he has queens, kings, or aces. Just, he has to have queens, kings, or aces here. He wouldn't play anything else this way. He maybe would raise pre-flop to 40 with pocket 10s. I don't think he would do that with 4s or 2s, but since I have a 10, the odds of him having that are very slim. I don't think he'd even do that with 7s, but again, I have blocker to that also. So I just don't see how he can have any hand that has me beat here. It's got to be an overpair. So I'm thinking whether I want to smooth call since I have position. He's check raising. I expect him to spew at the river no matter what comes. Or whether I want to raise here, I expect him to call as well. I don't think he's getting away from one of those overpairs. So I think if I raise now, I think he calls me. And if I just smooth call, I expect him to blast off on the river. So my thinking is, if I know he has an overpair, or at least I'm reasonably certain he has an overpair, I should just call here, make sure the board doesn't pair, and counterfeit me with a 2 or a 4 on the river. Because if a 2 or 4 comes on the river, I'm done with the hand. I know I'm beat. But other than that, unless he just happens to spike a set on the river, I feel like I'm pretty good. And if that's going to happen, I think he's going to call off on the turn anyway. So let me see what the river is. So I end up just calling here, just because I feel so confident that I know what he has. If it was a different player, or I didn't think that I really knew exactly what he had, I might just re-raise here or put him all in. But I feel like this guy's got queens, kings, or aces, so I just call, hoping the board doesn't pair. There's good news and there's bad news. The river comes, and it does not pair the board. But it is the ace of clubs. That's a pretty terrible card for me. If the river's a 2 or a 4, I know I'm beat. If the river is an ace or a king, he might have hit a set on me, or even a queen, I suppose. But now the odds of him having pocket aces are less, obviously, because there's one on the board. So maybe he has kings. I'm not sure. He's first to act now, and he leads for 400. I hate it because I feel like there's a very, very real chance he has aces. I put him on aces or kings the entire way. He's betting 400 into a pot that already has 660 in it, so it's 400 for me to win 1,060. And I really feel like if he doesn't just have pocket aces, I have this hand won. Now, if he had pocket kings, would he bet 400 on the river? I'm not so sure of that, but I'm definitely not raising. That's not even in my mind, because I'm really worried about aces. So I don't think too long. I just am getting the right kind of odds, the right kind of price. I don't think I can fold here, even though I'm very worried about pocket aces. And so I call, and sure enough, he flips over pocket aces, and I get hit by the 2 outer. If it would have just been a 2 or a 4, I could have saved my money. The ace is much tougher for the reasons I said. This one sucked. I'm not going to lie. So I lose a pot that's almost 1,500, would put me up a good chunk of money, and my roller coaster ride continues. I actually feel like I played this hand correct. A lot of times I feel like, hey, I should have done something better. I should have done something different. That ace 2 of spades hand I talked about earlier, I felt like I played that pretty crappy. But I really feel like I played this one right. I'm not trying to push aces out on the turn. I really want him to blast off on a river. So I kept him in there. And like I said, if a 2 or a 4 hits, I can get away from my hand. The ace is just the one card that he can hit that beats me, and that I can't get away from for 400. Here I have Jack Queen offsuit in the big blind. The hijack limps. I raise to 20, and only the hijack calls, so we're heads up. The flop is 9 of spades, 2 of hearts, 4 of diamonds, so I have 2 overs. That doesn't seem like a board that should hit him too hard, probably. I check. He bets 30, and maybe I'm a little bit steamy, maybe I'm a little bit tilty, but it just doesn't seem like 9 deuce 4 should be hitting this guy too hard. So I raise to 110, expecting to get a fold most of the time here. But he calls, so that's not great. The turn, however, is pretty great. It's the Jack of Hearts, and seems like as good as I could hope for based on the way I played this hand, and I got called on the flop. If he's got two pair or better here or an overpair, he just gets my money. So I just go all in for 245. I open shove my last 245, and he snap calls me, which is pretty scary. River is a brick. He shows queen 9, and I show my jack queen, and I end up doubling up. But trying to fight back and just get lucky here after check raising a flop and just kind of being unlucky that he has an actual hand. I get lucky on a turn, so got unlucky in the huge hand, but I'm not complaining. I double up here and have some chips to fight with to try to claw my way back into the good graces of winning monies. All right, everyone, last hand of the vlog. I am in the cutoff with Queen King of Clubs. That is a very pretty hand. I raise to 20. The button raises me to 60. This guy has been a nice guy. I've been talking to him. Cool guy. Also pretty tight. More tight aggressive, but more just tight, I would say. But a good player. I think about 4-betting, but this guy has not been doing a lot of 3-betting, so I don't think this is a great spot to do that with Queen King. So I just call and go to a flop. We're heads up. The flop is King of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds, 2 of Clubs. So that seems like a pretty great flop. Obviously, I'm still behind things like King Jack, Ace King, Pocket Jacks, Pocket Kings, things like that, but about as good as you can hope for with Queen King. And I have a backdoor club draw, but that doesn't seem super relevant at this time. I check. He bets 60, and I just call. The turn is the 9 of Clubs. That is also just a perfect card, really. I pick up the club draw, I pick up a gut shot straight draw, and I still have top pair with a nice kicker. So things are looking pretty good for me here. I have a top pair with a good kicker, and if I'm behind, I have just the absolute world that I could possibly hit. I check, and unfortunately he checks back behind me. This is another spot I would potentially put in a big check raise, just because I have just so many outs if I'm behind, and I very well could just be ahead. But he checks behind. The river is the King of Spades, which is also a pretty sweet looking card. Now I'm ahead of pretty much anything other than Ace King, King Jack, Pocket Jacks, and I don't think he's going to have any of the other pocket pairs to make a full house. So really those are the only hands I'm worried about. King Jack, Pocket Jacks, Ace King, and obviously the 2 King Jack and Ace King hands seem pretty unlikely since I'm holding the king and there's only one other king left in the deck. I also lose to Queen 10, which is a straight, but I don't think he's ever 3-betting me with Queen 10, although I guess it's possible from the button he'd 3-bet Queen 10 suited, but he hasn't done anything like that all night, and I don't expect him to have that hand. But seems like my hand should be pretty good. I'm first to act, and after it went check on the turn, I bet 180. I'm hoping to get called by aces or something like queens that thinks I probably don't have a king because there's 2 of them out there. Or maybe a worse king, although I don't think that's super likely. But I feel like I'm probably ahead, so I bet 180, hoping to get called, and he tanks for a really long time. And I'm just hoping for a call, as I'm thinking anything that has me beat is either raising or calling pretty quickly here. I just don't know how you could tank here and have me beat. So I feel pretty good. I'm really hoping for a call. And then before he calls, he says to me, man, this is really a tight just call. And before he even flips his cards over, I'm like, ah, shit. This guy's got Ace King, and he's just going to call me with Ace King. And sure enough, I show my hand, and he shows Ace King. What a cooler. Man. Just some nights of poker this way. In fact, a lot of my nights of poker have been this way lately. I start out doing pretty well, and then I just run into just the grossest coolers. Obviously, I was behind the entire time, so it's not like he sucked out on me or anything. I'm not saying that. Just I flop top pair with a good kicker. I turn the world with a gut shot straight draw and a big flush draw to go with top pair, and then I river 3 of a kind and just behind Ace King. So I lose a pretty okay sized one here. I guess I'm lucky he doesn't raise me on the river. I guess it's pretty hard for me to call with my hand, but it's also pretty hard for me to fold to a river bet there because, again, I'm only behind a very, very few hands. So I don't know. I might end up having to call a raise depending on what his raise is, but he just calls, so I guess I save a little money that way. But that's how this vlog comes to an end. Kind of a lot of pain in this one. This one was pretty up and down. All right, everyone, calling it a night in for 500 after a huge roller coaster of a night. Out for 465 for a loss of 35 after many hours and being up many dollars. Poker sucks sometimes, but here we are. I didn't lose a ton, and we'll try to do better next time. All right, we are back. Looks like we haven't really gone anywhere. Almost like I'm recording this pretty shortly after I recorded the intro. And yeah, this was a session of poker. I played many hours. It was very much a roller coaster. Several coolers in there. I felt like I played okay for the most part. I think I probably made a couple bad bets, maybe tilted on a hand or two there. But for the most part, I felt like I played pretty okay. What do you think? He thinks so too. You can let me know in the comments. And yeah, next vlog might be a 2-5 at Win or a 5-10 at Bellagio. Let me know what you're interested in watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.